Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JessieKnowTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome to another episode. We're going to be doing quite a bit today because, well, one, I won't be available tomorrow. So, yeah, no show tomorrow. So we gotta have to do a little bit of a catch-all here. If you weren't available to watch player ratings yesterday, we will talk a little bit about Everton, the Everton game now, and then move into a small preview ahead of Bournemouth on that's going to happen on Saturday, and also some transfer news and stuff like that. So make sure you guys are obviously liking the video and subscribing to the channel. If you're new here, welcome. Returning people, how are you feeling? Man, like it feels like every other day we have a game. And I feel like it's going to be like that for the rest of the season. You know, we're going to have Europa League coming back, and so we're going to have midweek games, and we have 13 games left, I think, in the Premier League. So it's going to be all guns blazing from here on out. And so I think an interesting conversation from an Arsenal perspective will be kind of how do we feel about our depth. I think we've had loads of conversations around, does Arsenal have enough depth? Do we have enough quality? Do we have players that can come in if significant injuries happen? How do we make sure that at the end of the season we have our best possible 11? And yesterday's game against Everton was probably the best I felt about our depth in a long time. I would actually say from Villa, Leicester, and Everton, I think our depth has been such a revelation this season. We know that last season we were pretty much skeleton crew with a specific 11 that when they played, they were really good. But if you kind of scratched beneath the surface of that, we started to feel a little bit less confident about what we had available. And this season, especially at the beginning, I think we felt quite similar. We know that, people didn't really feel that confident with Sambi coming in for Thomas Partey. El Neni has his injury issues as well. And then up top, if something were to happen to Gabriel Jesus, what do we do? Lo and behold, he got injured during the international break, and Kedia did a good job for a certain amount of time. And then we figured that, okay, maybe some other things need to switch around. We were able to bring in Trossard and Jorginho, and they have been such a huge boost in the midst of Arsenal having a little bit of an injury issue with Thomas Partey, a little bit of stagnation, a little bit of staleness. And so the depth is really starting to look good. For Arsenal to still be 5 points clear with Gabriel Jesus being out for almost 4 months, I think that just speaks volumes to like where we've gotten to. And Emile Smith-Rowe is coming back into the fold. Fabio Vieira is looking a lot stronger. And you saw a lot of that kind of, manifest itself against Everton. So yeah, the depth is definitely getting a lot better for sure. Tony says we aren't carrying anyone anymore. The bench can hold their own. I agree. Leonide says, the future is so bright. We have to wear shades. Exactly. And Amira is saying, hey, Jess, in chat, love these quick turnarounds. Bring on the next game. Saswat says, it's crazy that we were basically playing the entirety of our second half last season with our third choice fullback pairing, considering our first choice pair then are currently backups. Exactly. And Anik says, if ESR can get his match sharpness back, we're unstoppable in the next couple of years. So yeah, the depth is starting to look a lot better. And yesterday, I mean, the first half obviously wasn't exactly what we wanted. I don't think anybody's going to go back. Like when I rewatched the game, I'm not going to lie, fast forwarded through the first 30 minutes because I was like, I don't need to see that again. Because it was a little bit like, okay, is the goal coming? Is it not? We know Saka's goal kind of came out of nowhere, but it did kind of come after you notice that it was one of the moments where one of the Everton players went down injured. First, Amadou Onana went down like 4 times with a fake head injury. And that was annoying. It really was. But I think during one of those moments, the Arsenal players went to the sideline and spoke to Arteta. And then after that, you saw them going through the gears. You started to see Trossard pop up on the right, Martinelli moving into the middle. We saw a lot more rotations. And then we saw Zinchenko also, really pushing forward into the midfield and trying to find that killer pass. And that's how we ended up scoring the goal. And I think this is just the deal with the lower blocks. It's like you just have to kind of keep working through the gears until you get the opening, because most of the chances that you get or most of the openings that you see can maybe get cut out, or the pass isn't perfect, or there's just a little bit of a lack of quality, in a touch or something like that. But you're waiting on the opposition to switch off just for 1 second. And it takes a lot of concentration and a lot of luck, I think, for teams that play that way, to sit back and constantly be having the team attacking them, and for them not to make any mistakes. Basically all of our players are in the final third, all of their players are in their box, and they have to be perfect. And they switched off for 1 second. Zinchenko killed them with the pass, Saka buries the chance, and from there it's just smooth sailing. And so even though the first 30 minutes were not swashbuckling or champagne football, I think that's just kind of how it goes. And we saw it against Brentford, where we kind of had the same thing. We had to keep working. And that moment of a lack of concentration came, and Trossard scored the goal at the back post. We saw it against Leicester. They kind of sat back. They tried to stifle us. They weren't really attacking. And then boom, one moment of a lack of concentration, and Martinelli is in on goal. So we're going to face a lot of those coming up into the end of the season, because you're going to see teams that are fighting for their life are not going to come out and try to play us. And so we just have to continue to be patient. Once the goal comes, as long as we don't get silly at the back, we're usually good to go. So it was really interesting seeing Arsenal work through that issue, but they never really seemed phased. And I just feel a lot more confident every single time that we do it, or every single time we come up against one of those low blocks, that the goal is coming. I was at the Brentford game, and I have to say, it was very nerve-wracking. It was quiet in the Emirates. I think we were all kind of like, please, not another deep block, because of what happened against Everton. We came up against another one. We're starting to learn that the team is going to persevere beyond that. And if they decide to open up, it's even better for us. So yeah, it was a really, really good display of Arsenal's patience. And as a fan, I think we just have to kind of know that one moment that they don't get it right, we're going to punish them for it. Tony says, agree with the first 30 minutes about stressing the low block and punishing the mistake. Daniel says, I like the way we were patient even when they were in the low block. I found an opening with a brilliant pass from Zinni, an unbelievable finish from Saka. There was a moment in time like this. I mean, Saka, he's so good, but obviously he's a young player and he's developing. One of the things that I've loved to see Saka get better at is using his right foot, and from crossing with his right foot to being a little bit more unpredictable to actually shooting with his right foot. You can see that he's getting better and better and better. And that finish against Everton was so similar to the one against Leeds. And so, yeah, Starboy Saka, that was an unbelievable finish. And the pass from Zinchenko was inch perfect. And if you go back and you watch the game, or you just kind of search on Twitter or whatever for a compilation of Zinchenko against Everton, you see exactly why he is so important to our team. He obviously is playing like a midfielder, which sometimes can be a little bit uncomfortable. And when he doesn't get the pass right, it could be a little bit like, oh my gosh, I just want him to play more simply. But when he gets it right, it's spectacular. And so, yeah, Zinchenko for me on rewatch, I thought, yeah, he was actually, even though I thought he was excellent on the first time I watched it, he was actually much better when I rewatched it. Hoj says he's done that finish about 3 or 4 times this season. It's becoming a signature for him. Saswat is saying, speaking of low blocks, Newcastle better Burnley the F up against City like they did to us. Well, aren't they at home? I feel like at home they're not going to do that. I think the thing about Newcastle is they are in a little bit of a low period for them. Like, they started off really, really good at the beginning of the season. And ever since the World Cup, they've slowly started to kind of whittle away, a little bit of not a crumble. So, but the goals are starting to dry up. The defense is starting to leak more goals, and you're seeing that, they're not as fresh as they were at the beginning of the season, which I think a lot of people predicted. But what really surprised me was how I felt they were really arrogant against Liverpool a couple of weeks ago. They played a high line with Dan Burn, Sven Botman, and Fabian Schär. None of them are quick. And Nick Pope was in goal. And you saw that, Liverpool, they like to play long. They're a very good transition team. They probably have the most quick front line in the Premier League with Darwin Nunez, Cody Gakpo, and Mohamed Salah. And you know how they like to play those balls kind of right behind your center backs to try to get them turning towards their goal, and then they try to put pressure on you and make you make a mistake. And that's exactly what Liverpool were doing, and that's how Nick Pope got caught out. He's not a modern goalkeeper. He's not like Ramsdale and Ederson that like to play off of their line and kind of play almost like a center back. That's not really his game. And so I'm hoping that they've learned a lesson from there, and they kind of just remember that those center backs that they have back there are not that quick. And so they need to step back a little bit and maybe be a little bit more defensive and play on the counterattack. But I just think that they're going through a difficult period where they don't really have the goals in them right now. Actually, let me check. You guys are saying it's at the Etihad. I could have sworn that they already played at the Etihad earlier on in the season, but maybe it was at St. James. Yeah, they're at the Etihad. So, I mean, it does make it easier for them to go ahead and sit in, so hopefully they do that for sure. Let's see. Carlos says Man City miss Zinni massively. Maybe. But I would say that what I am hoping is that Newcastle gets some sort of result. When we played our difficult matches, we did really well. But right now, like, we really need, I think, a result for Liverpool against Man United this weekend, and also a result for Newcastle against Manchester City. I think because we're playing Bournemouth, we should be beating them pretty easily. So it'd be nice to see some of our opposition drop points. But yeah, I don't really have that much confidence in Newcastle right now because they don't really have any goals in them. And, no matter how well you defend, if you don't have goals, it's pretty much like, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? So yeah, maybe they draw. I think that's the best that they'll do. But kind of going back to us, I think we're really working through the gears now, and you start to see the old Arsenal from before the World Cup coming back. On rewatch, you see, like, I think Arteta really got into them after the Aston Villa game. I think he was really disappointed in the way that we defended for their 2 goals. It's just not the Arsenal way, especially under Arteta, to be so loose defensively and so easily bypassing the press, and the lack of commitment defensively and not really getting into them, and not until the second half winning our duels, winning the first and second balls. And you just seen against against Leicester and against Everton, albeit, the opposition isn't that great, we were really good in terms of keeping our shape and pressing and all that kind of stuff, and make it really difficult for them to create any sort of chances. So I'm seeing kind of us come back to life after kind of like a little bit of a lull there, after Everton. And we haven't even added Gabriel Jesus yet. So I'm loving it. Now, obviously, we play Bournemouth at the weekend, and Bournemouth are not a good side. It's to the point where Everton or Bournemouth to me are so bad that, like, I'm not even looking at their team or anything, like hoping certain players are out, because I expect us to absolutely batter them at our place. We beat them down at their place. Actually, that was probably one of my favorite performances from us this season. I know that they're terrible, but I loved that performance. I thought, because Saliba got the goal that day, and it was a really, really nice one. And so, yeah, I think at home, we should be battering them, and we should be closing that goal differential down. They should not score any goals against us. We should score 3 or 4 goals against them and really close that goal differential down, because if it does come down to it, what we don't want is for Manchester City to have 4, 5, 6 points on us in the goal differential column. So I think this is a really good chance for us to really close that gap, and also for us to rotate. I am very interested to see if Arteta is going to take this opportunity to switch some things around and give some players a chance to start that have been playing well in their cameo performances. So let me go ahead and just check something really quick because give me 1 second, you guys. I just want to check something super quick. Okay. So we play Bournemouth on the 4th, which is Saturday. And then on Thursday, the next week, we play Sporting. Now, I'm already starting to see people say we should just throw the Europa League. No, 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 no. You do not throw the Europa League. It's a chance at a trophy, and momentum is key. The more games you win, I think winning games gives you more energy than playing a really rotated lineup and potentially going out, but your players like that are starters play the next game. I don't think it's ever worked for us. So I still think we should play a strong lineup against Sporting. And that's why I'm thinking maybe we should get some of the players that are going to play in that game a little bit of game time before they go into that Sporting game, because it's going to be a big tie away from home in the Europa League. And some of these guys haven't had that much playing time. So maybe getting a couple of goals, assists, a good performance at home against Bournemouth will kind of ease them into that transition. And so I'm looking at players like maybe, Fabio Vieira, he starts. I think he's going to be super important. Maybe instead of White, maybe you start Tomiyasu, maybe you start Tierney, maybe not both, but, maybe start Tierney if he's going to be somebody that starts against Sporting. Kivior, should his first game maybe be, because Arteta said that we're going to really need Emile Smith-Rowe and Kivior in the next couple of weeks. And I think the reason why they played in the under-21s game was to get them kind of ready and kind of knock the dust off a little bit ahead of these Europa League games, because I do think there's going to be some rotation. So maybe Kivior gets 30 minutes at the end of the Bournemouth game, just so his first game isn't away from home, in a Europa League fixture when we have to win. For me, I really think we have to go semi-strong in the Europa League, not because it's our biggest priority, but because we're Arsenal and we should be going after every single trophy that means something. And so, I'm thinking Emile Smith-Rowe, Kivior, Fabio Vieira, one of Tommy or Kieran Tierney could potentially start against Bournemouth and, get them some more minutes, because that first game against Sporting, I know that it's not like the hardest tie in the world, but it's definitely not going to be that easy. Dale says, in the Arteta learning on the job theme, must go strong next Thursday in Europa League, winning wins, so to speak. And the thing about it is, if you go out there and you play a strong lineup and you win, and you kind of not put the tie to bed, but you make it much easier coming back to the Emirates, then against Fulham, you play another strong lineup, and then maybe you rotate more against a Sporting than at home in the home tie. I don't think we can play too rotated of a lineup. And what I mean by that is, like Tomiyasu, Holding, Gabriel, Tierney, Fabio Vieira, Odegaard, Jorginho, Eddie, everybody basically rotated. I don't think we can do that. I think it has to be both of the lineups against Sporting, or not Sporting away from home and Fulham away from home, have to be kind of strong. So that's why the Bournemouth game, you want to get some rotation in there then. If that makes sense. I just feel like when you do 6, 7, 8 changes, it really kind of like disrupts our continuity and makes it really difficult for us to win games. So maybe 3 or 4 changes versus 6, 7. Let's see. Tony says, we haven't had any really big physical efforts in this run. I think we will see basically the same team on Saturday and early subs to get minutes to ESR. Why is that? Oh, Trossard, Eddie, Fabio Vieira, and maybe even Kivior. Yeah, I hear you. I just think that, like, against Sporting, because we'll have to go a little bit stronger because it's away from home. I just feel like against Bournemouth, maybe like one of the players that I'm looking at that I think needs a rest is Granit Xhaka. That's why I'm really keying in on Fabio Vieira. Fabio should start against Bournemouth, and then you start Xhaka against Sporting, and you bring Fabio Vieira in later. That's what I think you need to do, because Xhaka just doesn't look like himself right now, but you need him in a big European away tie more than you're going to need Fabio Vieira then. So start Fabio Vieira against Bournemouth. In terms of like Eddie, and I think Eddie still is kind of carrying an injury, so we'll see what he does with that. But Trossard can continue to start. Maybe, like you said, maybe ESR comes in a little bit later. But I really think that that away tie against Sporting, you have to go a little bit stronger. So Bournemouth looks like a much easier game than that to me. So rotate more against Bournemouth. Akil says, I wouldn't rotate at all this weekend. Keep the momentum for the league. Early subs is the way to go. Maybe. I mean, I kind of hear what you're saying. I just feel like there are some players that need a little bit of a rest, and one of those is Granit Xhaka. So when I'm talking, we could just go ahead and do this now, because I think showing you guys with the formation makes it a lot easier. So you guys see what I mean by the rotation. I'm not saying like absolutely everybody, but like some players do need to be fresh for the game against Sporting. I want to have a good run in the Europa League. So against Bournemouth, what I would kind of be looking at a little bit is like Ramsdale, start Gabriel, but with an eye to maybe giving Kivior 20 minutes at the end of this game, because Gabriel is somebody that has to start against Sporting away from home, and he's played 1,000,000 minutes, and he's kind of like our best defender. So start him with an eye to giving Kivior a couple minutes, because I just don't think his first couple of minutes against if you're gonna play Kivior, like his first minute should not be against Sporting, I don't think. Saliba, of course. Right back, White had a little bit of a rest, so you just keep him in, but maybe you start Tierney and give Zinchenko a little bit of a rest. I don't know. Thomas, because obviously, he's been a little bit rested, so you keep him in. You start Vieira. I don't even know, does Vieira have a face on here? I always ask. Yeah, he does. Odegaard. Left wing, you start with, Trossard. Right wing, you start with Xhaka, Martinelli. And Trossard. Right? This is what I would do against Bournemouth, but then obviously I'm looking at that side and I'm saying, okay, well, Gabriel, you're going to come off early, and give Kivior some minutes. Maybe Thomas Partey comes off and Jorginho comes on a little bit later. ESR comes on for Martinelli, stuff like that, so the end of the game, maybe it looks more like this, because I'm telling you, some of these guys are going to need a little bit of a rest, this is a lot of football that these guys are playing. Let's see. Something like that. Or maybe Smith Rowe comes on for Saka or something like that. And then maybe Eddie comes on. So the end of the game, maybe it looks more like that. I don't know. But we're going to be seeing a lot of sharing minutes, but these teams need to be strong, because you can't just go away from home to Sporting and just expect to change 7 or 8 players and we're just going to be able to just play football. Like, it just doesn't work like that. And again, I think Gabriel, maybe you just want to give him a little bit of a rest against Bournemouth and let Kivior play with his teammates for the first time, at home instead of away from home, and an important Europa League tie. You give Fabio Vieira the start so that Xhaka can get a rest because you're going to need him against Sporting. And then you just look to rotate other people in, you know. But, Bournemouth is just such a good opportunity to rotate ahead of a good European tie. So I'm glad we have this game before it, because it could be worse. Like, you don't want to be playing like, Anfield away before you have to go away, to Portugal. You know what I mean? So yeah, but I would expect, Arteta to go, with mostly the same guys, and go strong against Bournemouth. But hopefully he does some rotation because we're gonna need it. Let's see what you guys are saying. Why can I never find my note? Okay, there he is. Yep, there you go. Trossard could go to the middle. I don't care. Shane says, change the left side for me. Kivior, Tierney, Zinni in the middle. Trossard. I think we should try Zinni in left mid. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know, you guys. I don't know if we'll ever see Zinchenko left midfield, because we've literally bought we've literally bought Vieira for that position, and he does it fine if he gets more playing time. So, but I understand why people want to see Zinchenko there because that's kind of what he's doing anyway. But I just don't think we'll see it. I'd be really surprised. Let's see. Marco says, I wouldn't be opposed to your lineup, Jess. I just don't think that's what Arteta would do. Exactly. I don't think it's what Arteta would do. But like at the very least, I think Fabio Vieira should start. Literally at the very least. Like if you don't change anything else, and then, you always, like you guys said, you have the opportunity if you get ahead early to take players out, after the job is done. Sin says, I can see those changes if we're 3-0 up at halftime. Amir says, I don't see Fabio starting, but I do think he gets 20, 30 minutes. Aren't Sporting and Porto rivals? He'd want to start on Thursday 100%. I don't know. I feel like I'd rather Vieira start against Bournemouth and then Xhaka start against Sporting just because it's away from home. And like, I get that Fabio Vieira is comfortable there, but I'm more going for like what's our strongest lineup against Sporting, not who's more comfortable in Portugal, if that makes sense. But we have good options, which is nice. Jacobson says, where do you think ESR will play in the future? I don't get why everyone says he'll be an 8. His best performance and moments have been from left wing. I don't know. I think there's like an obsession with getting Emile Smith-Rowe in Odegaard's position from a lot of the fan base. So I think it comes from a little bit of that. But I think we don't really know yet with Emile because he's been out so much that we haven't seen him consistently in a position except for left wing. But with the like Trossard coming in, that makes me think that may not be what Arteta's looking at him for. But also we bought Fabio Vieira and he seems to be the first guy off the bench to play in those 8 positions. So we just have to wait and see. But if I had to say like what I think Emile Smith-Rowe is, I think he's more of an interior type player, more of a creative player that can play off of the right, off of the left, and it's more about him being creative more than what position does he play. So, if he plays right wing, he's going to be playing more like a 10. If he's playing left wing, he'll be more like, a 10 than anything. So I think he can play the way that Emile Smith-Rowe plays. I think he can play in the 8 positions or left wing or right wing. He just plays it differently than Saka and Martinelli. Anik says, would love to see Partey back in the starting 11. The team is much more fluid with him protecting the back line and support the attacking buildups with awesome passes and only he and Zinchenko can make. I agree. Chip Chop says, think we should rest Saka this weekend. He's starting to look jaded at times. When he's scoring all of our goals, when does he look jaded? I hear what you're saying. I think people are really sensitive to Saka getting burnt out because he's such an important player for us. But at the same time, he's one of the only players in our team where we don't have real backup for him anybody that can play similar to him. So unless we want to use Reece Nelson against Bournemouth, which is an option, he wasn't on the bench yesterday, but he could be on the bench against Bournemouth. He's the only player that I could see actually coming in and playing that position from the start. But I do believe Saka will start. I think Arteta will play pretty much the exact same lineup against Bournemouth, but hopefully we're up early enough where we can get some rotation in. But my thing about Kivior, the only reason why I'm kind of obsessing over it right now is I just don't want him to play his first minutes because I think he is going to play in Europa League. It just can't be away from home against Sporting. It just can't be. It needs to be at home in a comfortable environment. So get 3-0 up, take Gabriel off and put Kivior in. So, he knows how to play with us or else you can't use him. Or the first time you use him is going to be in a really high pressure moment. And I don't think you want that. Kevy Kev says, I like the Kivior shout on ESR. I think his best position is attacking mid. I think the issue with the ESR thing is that because we don't play with a number 10, it's hard to see where he fits in. But I think that's the beauty of it is, even though he's not like a traditional 8 or a traditional winger, when you get him out there on the pitch, he offers something different than the players that already play in those positions. And so I think he's more of a Swiss Army knife type of player. And it's just a matter of when you want to use his qualities versus do we have a position for him? Because ESR does things that our other players just don't do. And he has the ability to carry the ball. He's a little bit more direct. He's a really good, ball. He strikes the ball quite well too. He's a real goal threat. And so it's just a matter of when you want to use those qualities and where you want to use them on the pitch. And I think he can do that from left wing, from right wing, maybe even false 9, left 8, right 8. He's just been too injury prone lately. Saswatz says Arteta's post-match interview heavily suggested that Vieira is one he plans to occupy that left center mid role in the future. I think he will start to get more responsibility from now on. I agree. I really think Fabio Vieira is on the cusp of getting a start. I don't know if it's going to be against Bournemouth or is it going to be against Sporting, but that start is coming. It's 100% coming. It's weird because the way that Arteta speaks about Fabio Vieira and also kind of the way he spoke about Kivior, the way, the type of qualities that they have and how they're going to change things for Arsenal and things like that makes me think that those players are people that he sees in the next couple of years really changing the way that we play. And so obviously Kivior is just coming in, so I don't expect him to do anything now. But Fabio Vieira, I think, is going to have a big role to play at the end of the season. And and his his connection with Gabriel Martinelli I think is going to show as well. Not just them taking silly pictures and being besties, but also being really complimentary on the pitch. It seems like the way that they play suits playing with each other, which is nice. Shane says, I am happy we finally have good changes on the bench. Way better problem to have than what we had last year or for the past decade, to be honest. I agree. CC says, I don't think we need to rest Saka. He's young. He's playing well, so keep going. And I think the other thing is, the club really know. I don't think they would risk Saka if he was in the red zone because he's so important. But the fitness team knows whether or not he's a player that needs to continue to play to keep his fitness. I think Thomas Partey is the type of player that needs consistent game time and needs to have a run of games to gain his fitness back, where some players need rest. And so I think they know whether or not Saka is in a dangerous position. So I think he'll just continue to play until they say it's too much. Let's see. Saswat says we need to recognize elite athletes when we see one. Vinny has started every game bar 2 in 2 years and doesn't look burnt out or jaded. Neither does Saka. Messi, CR7, never got games off either. Zich says maybe give ESR the second half. Exactly. You have to take care of business early on in order to be able to make those rotations. So 100%, even if Arteta does not start with, the changes that I said earlier on, I just think that you need to make some changes because these players are going to start playing very important matches. every 3 or 4 days, and so some guys are going to need some time off. Jesus says Xhaka not on the starting 11 in a season where every EPL match. Xhaka not in a starting 11 in a season where every EPL match is basically a final is a risky move. Xhaka is Arteta's his leader. I get what you're saying, but at the same time, we've seen Fabio Vieira play in that position more than once and do quite well in it. And so the only reason why I'm saying we can afford to play Fabio Vieira in that position against Bournemouth. It's Bournemouth. It's not, a top 6 side or Brentford or anything like that. It's a team that's going to come to the Emirates, not have any possession. We're going to be dominating them. And Xhaka, to me, looks like somebody who needs a rest. Now, whether, Xhaka starts and Fabio finishes the game or Fabio starts, I think we just need to see more of Vieira because, one, I think he's deserved it. And two, Xhaka is so important that he needs a rest. And my only reasoning for wanting it to be Bournemouth is I think Bournemouth at home is an easier game than Sporting away from home, where I know Xhaka is going to start that game. So, yeah, that's the only reason why. It's not because, I don't understand that he's a leader and all that kind of stuff, but even your leaders need a rest every once in a while. And Bournemouth at home is kind of like the last really easy game that we have. This is it. Like, if you're looking for, I think we have to play Southampton at home as well, so there's maybe one more in there, but these kind of like banker games where you're going to probably score 4 or 5 goals and you can rotate and stuff like that, we're not going to have very many of these coming back up. So, you got to use them when you can. Saksham says Trossard is undroppable right now. I kind of agree with that as well. Hoj says Arteta said top players need to be able to play every game when he was speaking about Saka being burnt out earlier this season. Exactly. I'm not really worried about Saka right now. I think if it becomes an issue, the club will make a decision, Daniel says, I remember when Arteta said that top players should be able to play twice a week. So yeah, I don't envision Saka being rested in any of these moments. I think he'll be playing pretty much every single game until the end of the season. There's 170 something of you guys in here, so make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Akin says, yes, Vieira is a good player, and apparently him and Martinelli have a special connection. Arteta mentioned it. I think just because Arteta's also really mentioning it, it's there and it's going to happen soon. I just don't know when. So, yeah. But let's go ahead and just do some quick predictions of what we think is going to happen in the Bournemouth game. Do you think we're going to blow them out? We're just going to do this quickly because Bournemouth is not really it's a banker, right? So I just want to get your guys' predictions and who you guys think are going to score the goals and how you think the game is going to go. So just let me know. And then we'll go ahead and get into some transfer stuff before we get out of here. So yeah. Make sure you guys are liking the video. Lagoon says, I like Vieira a lot. So do I. Chip Chop says 3-0. Anik says, 3-1 to the famous Arsenal. You actually think Bournemouth are going to score a goal against us? I really hope not. That should be another clean sheet. Oh my God, my eyebrows look really good today. I'm not going to lie, you guys. I spent a lot of time tweezing them and stuff like that. I know you guys don't care about that kind of stuff, but I'm looking at them in the camera and I'm like, yes. Anyways, Ho says 5-1. Hugo says 3-0. Arsenal, Saka, Martinelli, Trossard. Lay says 2-0. Triple C says, I reckon Kivior will get some minutes in this game. Need to get him prepped if he's going to start next week. I'm excited to see him. 100%, I agree that Kivior needs some minutes before we start to rely upon him. He needs a little bit of a taster, Kevy Kev says Arsenal 5-0, 4 different scores. I would love that. Smart Cookie says 4-0. Dev M says 6-0 to the Arsenal. May says 3-0 to the Arsenal. Saksham says 3-0. Come on, you Gunners. Saturdays equals you says don't underestimate any opponent. Take them serious and handle business. 100%. Legume says 7-0 Arsenal. Daniel says 3-0 to the Arsenal. Let's see. Shane says hopefully we keep a clean sheet because it's very important. It is. We have got to get that goal differential as close to City as possible. Richie Rabbit says, I think we've turned a corner and Jesus returning will give us a huge psychological and footballing boost. I agree. So yeah, but let's get into a little bit of, so my score prediction is 4-0 Arsenal. I think we're going to blow them out. Not because I'm underestimating them, but I just think we're significantly better than them. We're at home. And like Richie Rabbit says, we've kind of turned a corner. And so I expect us to have a really good game against Bournemouth. They're terrible. Let's see. Next, I just want to kind of chit chat about some transfer rumors, because I know you guys love that kind of stuff. About Declan Rice, apparently Jack Wilshere can have an important role in getting him to the Emirates. Jack could influence Rice to come to Arsenal, as the pair are tight. They have a tight relationship from their time at West Ham. Rice will think twice on Chelsea due to lack of CL. United an option, but Arsenal in pole position. That's coming from Sammy McBell. I am reluctant to really get too bought into this just yet, just because we kind of know that Chelsea is his boyhood club, and they will obviously have an interest in him, and we see how sometimes when Chelsea get involved, players can be swayed by outside factors and things like that. But he seems to be our number one target, and I'm pretty sure we're doing some work behind the scenes to try to get him to Arsenal. Obviously, I'm sure Saka will do his job. Ramsdale will try to do his job. And if Jack Wilshere and Declan Rice have a pretty close relationship, he'll try to help as well. The interesting thing about the Declan Rice conversation is that I just still don't really know what position he'd play. And Roy Keane actually went out of his way to kind of criticize Declan Rice and say, for a player that, people are saying that is going to go for 100 million pounds this summer, you should be getting goals and assists, from a player like that. And I find that very interesting, because I think that's the only reason why I'm a little bit can he play in the 8 role? Can he play in that 8 role? Because the issue with Xhaka is not that Xhaka is not a good player. It's just that when he gets into the final third, sometimes he leaves kind of a lot to be desired in terms of his creativity in the final third, his mobility, his agility, being able to manipulate the ball and stuff like that. And he seems to second guess himself when he's in really good shooting positions. And, so is Declan Rice really an upgrade on Xhaka in terms of what we need in an 8 final third wise? The one thing about Rice, though, is that, I think Arteta really does value stability in his midfield. And I think that's a big reason why Granit Xhaka has been used so heavily. Granit Xhaka gives us a level of authority in midfield, and if you remove him, I do feel like it feels a little bit lightweight. If you just have Fabio Vieira and Odegaard all the time, that's not really the same robustness that you need in certain games that you get with Granit Xhaka. He wins the ball back, he does his defensive work, he's really box to box, he has an engine on him and things like that. And so I can see a likeness between Declan Rice and Xhaka in that respect. But Declan Rice, if we're talking about who's a better ball winner, a better, athlete and things like that, he is a better version than Granit Xhaka in that respect. But are they kind of similar in terms of the final third stuff? That's kind of where I'm looking at him okay, well, how does he upgrade us in that regard? Now, I know that Declan Rice can score goals. It's just a matter of is it he's playing in such a pragmatic system that he doesn't really get in those positions, or does he lack that skill set? And is Arteta the type of manager? We kind of know he is, but is he the type of manager that's looking at him as somebody that he can mold into the perfect 8? Because I don't see him, I don't see him really overtaking Thomas Partey in the 6th position, so it has to be the 8th position. So it's an interesting conversation, and I do feel like some people just don't like him because he's English. But if he's our number one target, I want to try to understand why Arteta is looking at him. Todd says Declan Rice can score goals. Laughing. Anik says Sterling is washed. This is noise from his agent. Okay, you guys are talking about Sterling. Richie Rabbit says when Rice becomes England captain, he will get benefit of the doubt from refs. That's a big reason why I want him. I really do want somebody that is going to get benefit from the referees. Like, I think those things are important. Amira says I feel like he'll be more of a 6 than an 8, but I do think that he's in a better system. He will thrive more than he is now. Scored a great goal at the weekend, so at least he's not afraid to shoot. Like, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, if he does get into those positions, like Xhaka was in the Leicester game, and like he was against Everton, do I think Declan Rice is gonna like stutter and kind of be reluctant to take the shot or make the cross? No, I don't think so. I think he will pull the trigger. So he has a really good passing range and stuff like that. It's just he's not the type of 8 that I like. But it's not about my personal preference. Like, I see some of you guys saying McAllister. McAllister is to me the type of 8 that I would want for Arsenal. I think him and Odegaard and Fabio Vieira for me would be a nice little rotation of 8s. And McAllister for me is very similar to Gundogan, which is the type of role that I think Arteta is trying to make Granit Xhaka into, but he doesn't quite have the cuteness and the mobility, and he doesn't really have that. He's a little bit too stiff, because Gundogan does do the pressing and winning the ball back and things like that, but he gets into the final third, he arrives in the box, he scores goals and things like that. And I think McAllister is so similar. That's why I also think Manchester City are looking at him for the summer as well. But McAllister for me is the ideal 8 for Arsenal, but Declan Rice is our number one target. So clearly there's something different that Arteta and the club are looking at that is beyond my personal preference. Yo-Yo says I've enjoyed watching Bruno G or Madison in midfield. I was really scared of potentially watching a midfield of Rice and Caicedo. Why is that though? Is it because they're not as, attacking, or you feel like they're too samey or a little bit too defensive? Why is that? That'd be really interesting to know what you think about that. C. Wilder says De Jong, for me, I think he's most likely going to end up at Manchester United, but I hear you. Black Star Boy says Rice is a DM, not an 8. The one thing I'll say is that if you disregard what Declan Rice does for England, because I don't really think that what you do for your country is an indication of who you are as a player in club level. Thomas Partey has played forward for Ghana, So if you take that out, he basically plays in a double pivot for Moyes next to Souček. And so they kind of share the responsibility, kind of similarly to like how Thomas Partey and Xhaka were before Xhaka started moving forward a little bit more. And he shares that responsibility with Souček. And so he's not really tasked to make a lot of, runs into the final third. Moyes just plays with 110, and he really just does not have any creativity in the side. But I read a quote from Declan Rice saying that he likes to play box to box. He likes to arrive in the box. He likes to score his goals, and he'd like to show more of that. And I think disregarding his environment, when you analyze what type of player he is, I think is selling him a little bit short. We know that your environment and what your manager is asking you to do can look like can limit the way that people see your skill set when it's really not about your skill set. It's about what the manager is asking you to do and kind of how you play. And so do I really think that Declan Rice can't score goals and can't get into the final third? No, I think that that's just not how they play for West Ham. They play with a 10. They're not really as forward thinking or attack minded as Arsenal. And so he suffers from a box to box standpoint because of that. And just because he plays DM for Southgate doesn't mean anything. And I just don't think he's the type of 8 that we have in our mind, because the idea is to move Xhaka out and get somebody that is like a true goal threat. But you also don't want to get somebody that's so attack minded that you lose your defensive solidity. And that 3-man midfield that's so well balanced, because I still think that Xhaka, Partey, and Odegaard is so well balanced. It's just what we didn't really have this issue when Xhaka was getting into the final third and scoring the goals. We weren't even thinking about this stuff, but since those goals have kind of dried up, we're going back to like, okay, we need the goals. And but I don't really want somebody that is not going to be able to get back and do the defensive work and be a true box to box, if that makes sense. You are spamming, so I'm just going to block you for a little bit. Saksham says, Jess, SMS is the best number 8 we can get. He's elite in the final third. That guy's not coming to the Premier League, though, is he? He's not, right? Black Star Boy, says, okay, I agree. I remember Partey was a sitting DM at Atletico, and Arteta really gave him much more freedom to get forward, and he's transformed since. I do think that, like, people get really, because at first, even when Thomas Partey came in, people were saying that he was an 8 and weren't sure if he could play number 6 by himself. Like, I do think Arteta really thinks that he can transform players, and he looks for the raw ingredients and kind of makes players into what he wants them to be. And Declan Rice could be no different. But then there's also like the soft factors for Declan Rice that is also important. The fact that he rarely misses games, because the thing about Granit Xhaka is if you're going to replace him, you have to get somebody that has some of those soft factors as well. The leadership, the physicality, the athleticism, and also like the availability. Declan Rice has that stuff too. So you can't just get rid of Granit Xhaka and then bring in some flimsy guy that gets injured all the time. Like, you cannot replace Granit Xhaka with Maddison for me. Like, it has to be somebody that has that leadership, that has the voice, that can, operate within the midfield of Odegaard and Thomas Partey and really complete it. And then, also has more going forward. Because Granit Xhaka has so many good qualities, and I feel like if you take that out, you are going to be missing it. Let's see. Boy says fan base was smoking high grade by insisting that Partey was some sort of box to box. Eric says Rice will be a different player than what he is at West Ham, but that's the scary part. McAllister will be creative, and will be other familiar Brighton players. Man City will definitely sign him. If we don't, you can't sign every single player. And that's the thing. I would hate to miss out on McAllister because I think he'd be perfect at Arsenal. But at the same time, like, you don't want to miss out on Declan Rice if that's your number one target. But Arsenal are looking for more than one midfielder. That is what's being reported. It's not just Declan Rice. It's also bringing in another midfielder, which is fun because then we can speculate on what kind of midfielder it'll be. But we are being linked with Romeo Lavia, the Belgian midfielder that came from Man City that's now at Southampton, which is funny because it's like, well, if you won't send your players to us, or if we cannot buy your players, we'll just wait for you to sell them to other teams and then we bring them. But Romeo Lavia is a really good young developing defensive midfielder at Southampton. He's 19 years old, and he's been somebody that I think a lot of people are like, where is he going to go next? Because he's definitely not going to stay at Southampton, especially if they get relegated. He stands out, and I think he'd be a good option if you can't get Caicedo. I still think Caicedo is probably a little bit more developed than Lavia, but either one of them would be good because I'm assuming that Declan Rice is not going to play the 6th role. So whoever comes in as a backup DM will probably be a younger player, because Jorginho's not going to be here that long. And so, you want to bring in somebody that's young and up and coming that has a bright future. But I also feel like what I don't want to see is for us to get rid of all our athleticism and physicality in midfield and get somebody like, I don't know, more of a ball player or more of a Jorginho type without having a Thomas Partey, because Thomas Partey is not going to be here forever. He's 30, and so we don't know when he's going to fall off the age cliff or whatever. And I think without him, we just lack that athleticism and physicality. So if you can bring in a Caicedo and a Lavia, and instead of like a Zubamendi or something like that, maybe that's the best option, because as good as Zubamendi is, I just feel like you start going with a Zubamendi, Odegaard, Fabio Vieira type midfield, and we're looking a little light. We're looking a little light. So, I think either one of those options would be great, but we are being linked to Romeo, Lavia, and I think that'd be a really smart move. I think Southampton has really good recruitment policy, quite similar to like Brighton, but they're just not as successful because they can't get the coaching part right. But like if you look at their players and the players that they recruit, that is a nice little group of players that you can look at and say like, okay, maybe this player can step up to the next level, and maybe he can do that. So we're being linked with him. But I think what's going to happen is we'll bring in a marquee. So it'll be like Rice, and he was going to cost a lot. And then the other midfielder is going to be cheaper, but more of an up and coming player to kind of replace Sambi. Because I do think if you bring in a Lavia or Caicedo, that kind of, for me, would say Sambi maybe would be moving on. And there have been reports that, Sambi and Nuno will be moved on, and maybe they'll look at Kieran Tierney to move on as well. So if you let Sambi go, then you replace him with somebody that's more suitable for that number 6 role, and Caicedo or Lavia would be perfect for that. Let's see. O'Malley says, plus Zubamendi is a release clause deal and pretty straightforward. So O'Malley is saying Zubamendi is actually pretty quick and defensively sound. He is a really good player. So it's not that I don't think he's good. I just feel like, do I want to get rid of all the physicality in my midfield? And I think that you can be good defensively in terms of interceptions and being a really smart defender, but then are you covering ground well? We like basically the difference between having Jorginho and Thomas Partey in your midfield. And for me, I think in the Premier League, you need to have a little bit of that. You can't have all just technicians all the time. Let's see. O'Malley, you guys already said that. Saksham says, knowing Edu, he has a fetish with release clause so we can get Zubi. Mad Rambo says, Madison is always injured, though. Tony says, yep, our next right center mid, left center mid pair will be different. We'll buy a talisman and a partner. Exactly. Jay says, Rice 100%, but 100 million, though. I mean, the market has just gone to another level in the last couple of seasons. I mean, really good like midfielders are now, even if they're not the best midfielders in the world, are going for 80, 100 million plus. And so Declan Rice is not going to be any different, even though I still see this 80 million pound, price tag being banded around. I don't think it's going to be 80 million. I know it's going to be more than that. So he's English. He's pre-prime. He has a lot of hype around him. He's going to cost a lot of money. But if it's what Arteta wants, then you got to go get him as number 1 target, right? Saksham says, if we sell Balogun for less than 70 million, I would be mad. I don't even want to think about selling Balogun right now, to be honest. Kevy Kev says, remember that beef Rice had with Nketiah? Rice had a lot to say. I do wonder how they'd get on. Well, they're friends. Like, I think sometimes, like, even Jorginho said that him and Xhaka have gotten into it on the pitch before, but Xhaka, helped him find a restaurant to eat at and paid for him, and now they're cool. So I think when you see people fight on the pitch, it is just that. They just fight on the pitch. And Declan Rice and Nketiah know each other from way back. I was reading something about, Nketiah used to like bring Declan Rice jollof rice and shit like that. And he used to eat with Nketiah with his family and shit. So they're friends. And I'm sure that's just what it is. And if Declan Rice makes, the trek over to the red side of London, I'm sure that they will get along. I wouldn't be too worried about that, to be honest. Saksham says Martinelli finishing, looking great. He has clinical dog in him. We know that like Martinelli has always been a finisher. That's why people have always wanted him to play center forward. But yeah, he's doing really well. 4 goals in his last 3 games, which is really, really good. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Wayne says, yeah, Chelsea connection with those 2 boys. Exactly. So it's nothing really to, get too worked up about. But 2 midfielders, it'd be really interesting because that is a lot of midfield. You have Odegaard, Thomas Partey, and then like if Declan Rice comes in, that I think would end up being the starting midfield 3. And then you have Xhaka, Jorginho, Vieira, and one more. So if you can bring in like a young up and coming DM, I think that midfield group is a real step up from what we've seen in the last couple of years from Arsenal. And then we just have to bring in a winger, and another fullback, and we're good to go. The summer is going to be super interesting from an Arsenal perspective because we'll be back in Champions League, so you can attract a different type of player. The money will be there, and I'm really looking forward to it because, I mean, first of all, who doesn't love transfers? But if we do win the Premier League, I think we'll see some players really wanting to come to Arsenal that maybe didn't think of us as an option a couple of years ago. Richie Rabbit says, Rice isn't any less progressive than Xhaka, or you mean any more or any less? If you're saying any less progressive, I do think that like there's similarities between their game, but I do find Declan Rice to be more well-rounded. But at the same time, like I would be eager to see him in Arteta's system. And when he gets on the edge of the box, what is his first inclination? When he is kind of in the left half space, can he find the cross or find the shot early? That's what I'd be interested to see with him, because if he's better at that than Granit Xhaka, then it makes a lot of sense to me. Let's see. Amir says, I think Eddie's mom used to pack Chelsea's academy boys jollof rice for when they had to travel on the bus to away games. It's actually a cute story, not going to lie. Exactly. Triple C says, hi, just found this channel a month or so ago. I'm loving it. Great insights, great content. Keep it up. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Harry says, I do wonder if the club will ever really go big since the Pepe drama. We've pulled out on Mudryk, Martinez, etc. because of huge fees. I'll pleasantly surprised if we pay over 80 million for Rice. We pulled out on Mudryk, but we did put in like a sizable bid for him. 85 million would have been our record signing, and we were more than willing to do that. It was just Chelsea were willing to pay Mudryk more wages and also put together a payment structure that was more attractive to Shakhtar. Plus, I just think Shakhtar wanted to sell him to Chelsea, period. And then Caicedo, we put in an 80 million pound bid for him, and so we were more than willing to do that. So I think Arsenal are willing to do it now, especially because they know Champions League is going to be available. But we are going to smash our transfer record this summer on a player. It's going to happen. I'm sure of it. Let's see. Lionite says Declan Rice would be the best option. Fabulous player. I really like that the whole entire fan base is not 100% on Declan Rice, because I do think that it offers an opportunity to have good, healthy debate and really chit chat about what we think that position should look like. It's very difficult to sometimes we're all in on a player and we all want that player mostly, but I've never seen a split like this. And so it's nice to hear what people are saying. Yo-Yo says, I'll say it again, don't underestimate the potential power of the images of a Prem medal around Saka's neck and Arteta lifting the trophy above his head. Nase says, I wonder if we could prize Leao from Milan, as the noise is he hasn't signed a new contract and one's out. He is someone we should be looking at to freshen things up in attack, especially with CL. The only thing about Leao is that although like I wouldn't be like against it, obviously, because I think he's a really talented player. I just wonder what the impact of bringing in Trossard means for left wing. I think we're kind of okay there right now. We have Martinelli that plays there, Trossard that can play there, ESR can play there. So do we need another left winger? We know that the position that has got to be addressed is right wing. And with Arsenal being kind of like wanting to bring in Pedro Neto before, looking at Rafinha over the January window in the summer, I do think that that's a position that's going to get looked at more than left wing, if that makes sense. Let's see. Abby says Declan is Arteta type player. He'll thrive under Arteta. C. Wilder says the number of people backing Rice makes me feel like I'm wrong, but I've personally never seen anything other than a bang average player in him. If that's what you see, then that's what you see. Like, not all of us are going to agree, and we don't have to. And it doesn't mean you don't have ball knowledge or anything like that. We always have different, feelings on players based on what our personal preferences are and, stuff like that. So if you don't rate Declan Rice, there's nothing wrong with that. Saksham says Liao is an upgrade on the position, but we don't really need him. So yeah, I agree. But you guys, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I know that this was kind of a shorter one, but I wanted to make sure, one, that we got a short preview done. We kind of talked about Everton and we did a little bit of transfer stuff. I know it was a little bit of a catch-all, but I'm not going to be available tomorrow, unfortunately. So the next time that we'll probably talk to each other is on Saturday after the Bournemouth game. So make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, stay safe, share this with a friend, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Love y'all. Bye, guys.